everybody knows who that is. Beyonce is the inspiration for this talk, and she will be a major player in this arena. I don't think anyone has ever seen Beyonce enter the CD space, but I am doing that today. So, Renaissance Act 1, it is based on the album that just came out in 2022, and it's about just bringing new life and new energy into a time that, honestly, in the last 2 years, we've seen a lot of people become more insular and not really focus on community due to the pandemic, and we're trying to build that next generation of the Spinnaker community. So who am I? I am Maria, and I'm a developer advocate at Armory. But before that, I was a computer science tutor at the University of Southern California. So I used to work for CS at SC, and I worked with students starting in kindergarten through 12th grade, teaching them computer science principles, anywhere from 4-year-olds learning Scratch to 12th graders doing interfaces in Java. So that connects with my work, because if a 7-year-old can do Java, I think I can teach a developer how to work with Spinnaker. And I've also been a lifelong community advocate. So before this, I worked a lot with the National Society of Black Engineers. You can see that picture of me and my NSBE community, and without them, I would not be here today. They were there anytime I felt insecure about myself or my accomplishments or just my capabilities, and I want to provide that safe space that was there for me. And I think everybody has the right and should have that privilege to be able to learn and grow and just be a computer scientist, no matter what they look like. So we're just going to have 3 points to this talk. We're going to have a brief history of the Spinnaker community, where it is right now, and where can we go in the future. So everybody in here probably knows Netflix open sourced Spinnaker in 2015. After that, Google joined the project through Kubernetes. We had our Kubernetes expert here. I can probably show you better articles about this, but in 2019, after that, Spinnaker joined the CDF. And then the pandemic happened in 2020, and Google and Netflix left the project, and it kind of put us at a standstill. So here's what it looks like today. So it's used by a lot of companies. Ben gave the stat earlier about 10 million monthly deployments, which I think is insane to think about, because deployments, you're like, okay, that's just lines of code, but you have to realize that you're deploying to do something. You're helping people. So you see, like Under Armour, they're helping people be better athletics. You have people at Target, helping people get what they need in their day-to-day life. So we're helping probably billions of people through those deployments, and I think that's a really powerful thing. And then we have over 14,000 Slack members. I hope every single one of you guys are in the Slack channel. If not, join it. So what's the problem that we're facing? So contributions have gone down significantly, and that you can't really see that slide very well, but if I could turn off the lights, but I can't, you can see that there's a trend line going down. In the last year, contributions have gone down significantly. And that's a really important stat, because contributions are what keeps us competitive. Because without those contributions, we won't have features, we won't be able to maintain anything, and we won't really be able to run functionally as a community. And we need more contributors, because more people means more engineering power. More people means more people working on the documentation so everything's up to date. More people means that there are people who are around to run events like Spinnaker Summit and Gardening Days in the future, and helping lead the next generation of the community. So we have our stats, we know what it looks like right now, so what can we do to change it? And, I got ahead of myself. So is this normal? So I don't know if any of you guys seen this. Gartner put out this hype cycle that I was introduced to. So first you have the technology trigger. So when Spinnaker first came on the scene, everyone was like, oh my gosh, CD's important, let's get involved. And then you have this peak of inflated expectations, like Spinnaker can do everything, Spinnaker can like cook my dinner for me, make everything easier. And then you have this trove disillusionment. And honestly, I think that was the pandemic, where we saw contributions go down, because Spinnaker didn't meet everybody's overhyped expectations. They stopped contributing, and they felt like, okay, I'm going to move on to another project. This isn't for me, and I don't see the point in this right now. So where I want us to go is to hit that slope of enlightenment, where we went through those doldrum periods, and we have a new group of people to bring people back into the community and encourage them to keep contributing and just bring Spinnaker back to where it was before. And then you can hit that plateau of productivity where you're a mature project and your community can sustain itself. So where we're trying to go is from that trove of disillusionment to that slope of enlightenment. So what's another example of this? What does the Gartner hype cycle look like in real life? I hope everyone knows who that is. So here's Beyonce's Gartner hype cycle. So the technology trigger, and this is my own opinion, we can talk about this after the talk. Beyonce's self-entitled album came out in 2014, broke streaming records. There was little to no promotion, yet she broke the record for iTunes sales, Spotify streaming. Apple Music wasn't out at the time. Her world tour sold out, and that's where she became a household name. She was popular before then, but she sort of still had that cloud of Destiny's Child before that, and she wasn't this massive pop culture icon that she was after Self-Entitled came out. So then we have peak of inflated expectations. She came out with a Netflix special called Homecoming, and it was about her 2018 Coachella performance. And it was I believe, a $500 million deal with Netflix. And it probably is one of the best performances I've ever seen in my life. I watch it on the regular. In my opinion, it has set the gold standard for what live performance should look like. So that's a lot to deal with. If you do something so groundbreaking relatively early in your career, how can you live up to that? So then we have her trove disillusionment. In my opinion, it was when the Lion King movie came out. I don't think it was very good. I don't think anybody thinks it was very good. And she sort of had this period of about 2.5 years where she was doing a lot of cover songs. There was not a lot of innovation in the space. She wasn't capturing audiences the way that she did for Homecoming and Coachella. They actually called it Baychella for a long time. So a lot of people could not live up to her hype. And then earlier this year, she came out with a single, Break My Soul. And that reached the top 10 charts, and they were not expecting her to do so because being 41 in the pop industry is basically a bit like being retired, ancient. No one's ever heard of you. And she was able to break that with no promotion whatsoever. She deleted all of her posts on Instagram and just put a date, and she was still able to sell her that single and sell merch that literally she sold merch that people had never seen before and sold it out within an hour. So that was sort of her enlightenment period. But in July 28th, she came out with the album Renaissance Act 1. And that album, she used her star status to bring a lot of marginalized voices to the front. So she featured a lot of Black culture, a lot of LGBTQ drag culture, places that lived, that were there before, but they were not in the mainstream, and she was able to use her status as a legacy act to bring those people to the forefront. And that album is still in the top 10 most listened to albums, even though summer is long past. And she's coming out with the Renaissance World Tour, and yesterday at an art auction, she sold 2 tickets for $70,000. So it's just showing that this one person can go through large cycles in their career. So just because you have a doldrum doesn't mean your career is over, or in our case, the community should stop growing. There's always room to grow. So how do we get to that slope of enlightenment? So I'm very biased as the SIG lead for Contributor Experience, but I think one of the best ways to do that is to highlight the contributor experience, because there would be no Spinnaker without the people who contribute to it. And my job as a SIG lead and a developer advocate is to make those people's lives easier. Because when you have an idea, getting lost in the weeds and the politics will turn you off from wanting to contribute again if it was a difficult experience, and that's making us lose out on a bunch of innovative and free-thinking people who could absolutely change the course of this community. So what does that entail? So here's my game plan. I think we need to, number 1, improve and update Spinnaker content. And then number 2, we need to analyze and improve the contribution process. We need to poll the community and see what's going on behind the scenes. And number 3, community outreach. So what does improving Spinnaker content look like? So number 1, I don't know if Tiffany's here, but we need to revive the doc SIG. I believe that in open source communities, SIGs run like departments. And in our case, that the doc SIG is probably one of the most underfunded and underused, but most important department in this community, because it allows people who are new to the space to just have a guiding hand to start the process. People need to have a clear way to install the software. Like, you shouldn't have to struggle and get a person one-on-one to be able to install. That means we're not doing our job right. Number 2, reviving the blog. If you've looked at the blog, there hasn't been a lot of activity in the last year or two, and Kelsey had a great point about this, about saying that we need to talk about our experience, talk about what it's like installing for the first time, talk about if you're working on Cloud Driver, what's that experience like? And you might reach more people than you think. Even if 10 people look at your blog, there might be that one person who's like, oh, that's really interesting, let me contribute to the project. So it's the cheapest way to outsource. It's the cheapest marketing on the planet. And then 3rd, creating new forms of content. In the last 2 years, content has just exploded in the tech community. There are so many ways to reach people, and we can see this is a global space. You don't have to meet people face to face to connect with them. We can get into live streaming. You can start using Twitter Spaces. That's a great way for people to learn. I've already learned so many things just by sitting in a Twitter space and listening to people talk about their experiences, talk about their failures, and give me resources about how to be a better developer, how to be a better advocate. And those are generally low-lift activities. You just need a camera and some Wi-Fi. And maybe if you're fancy, Adobe Photoshop. But it's not a super intensive thing. So I think we need to really focus on those angles to get there, because once you put a blog out there, in 5 years someone might use it. 10 years someone might use it. So it's about building longevity in the community. So second, how do we improve the contributor experience? Before we even start launching a bunch of activities, we first need to ask them, how do we make your life better? What's going on right now? What problems do you have? And one way that we want to do this is by just having a 3-question survey every time somebody commits a PR and say, hey, what was that experience like? What would you like to see changed? Would you like to tell us more about your experience? And just getting a census on what's going on and seeing where people are on their journeys and how we can help as a Contributor-Experience SIG is going to go a long way, in my opinion. Number 2, improve the installation process. That's a huge one. I know that's a big, monster to deal with, but I think that's something that's super, super important because the first step is install. And if people can't get to step 1, how are they going to get to step 2, 3, 4, 5, etc.? We have to make that easy for them. And then number 3, create more opportunities to learn. I believe before my time at Armory, there was Try Spinnaker Project, and I think we need to really start working on those testing environments because a lot of people, myself included, really suffer from this paralysis of having everything to be perfect. We need to give people the room to fail and to fail fast because that's where innovation lives. You got to fail to learn. And people are afraid of breaking things. So we have to give them that space to do so. We have to give them that space to, if they have never ever, they don't even know what a Kubernetes cluster is, we have to get them there. We have to give them the chance to learn something because you never know who might be the next innovator in the space. So we have to reach out and support them. And then outreach. So Cameron mentioned this earlier, but Gardening Days was our version of a hackathon. And from everything that I've been hearing about it, it was a major success. Actually, the previous SIG lead, Ige, his first experience with Spinnaker was through the Gardening Days. And he became a SIG lead after that. So that's just one person's story. So how many more stories are like that haven't been told? So I think that's something we really need to invest in because this is the future and we can't gatekeep this information. We have to spread it and spread it like wildfire and give people the chance to just try it. Number 2, meetups. KubeCon is fun. KubeCon is awesome. But KubeCon is like Developer Fashion Week. It's a lot of, I'm going to show you what I have. This is my branding. This is my company. And there's not a lot of opportunities to just learn and find a space to network. So I think we need to start reviving the Spinnaker meetup groups so you can find people in your city, your town, or even hybrid ones, of people who are interested in the same thing as you. And that's how we can start to kickstart this community growth. And back to what I said about before, about expanding our virtual content. We're in a global space now, and the hybrid environment is getting easier and easier to do. So we have to accommodate those people who are maybe immunocompromised or have family or different obligations who can't be there in person. I love the in-person atmosphere, but we have to be inclusive with everything that we do. So here's my little roadmap. By the end of this year, I want to launch a community survey with the Contributor-Experience SIG. Even if it's 3 or 4 questions, launch it and get some feedback. Number 2, I want to revive the blog and get the educational content up to date. Because if you look at the Spinnaker demos, they haven't been updated in at least 2 years, and they don't even have, they feature things that are depreciated. Number 3, Spinnaker Gardening Days, hopefully April 2023. That works perfectly because gardening in spring. And then Spinnaker Summit 2023. I'm so happy that I had the opportunity to work on the planning committee with so many talented people, but I think there's still a lot of work to be done. And I think with all the steps beforehand, we can have an even bigger Spinnaker Summit and have more spaces for people who, because I think right now we're seeing the power users, the people who are very, very interested in Spinnaker, but we want to have more casual Spinnaker users involved in this process as well. So growing that is one of my pieces of the roadmap. But we need you to do it. Right now, the Contributor-Experience SIG is 2.5 people. And I say 2.5 because we have people coming in and out. But we need you to grow. We need people helping on the blogs. We need people contributing to documentation. We need people just working on event planning or project management of all the things that are going on. Because if you look at the issues, there's a laundry list of issues, but there's no way to prioritize that. That's a job in itself. So we need community support for it to grow. It's a group project. We need 100% participation. Yeah, but that's all for me. Any questions? And if not, this is where you can find me. I'm on Twitter, and I'm also on the Spinnaker Slack, and I'm on LinkedIn, but that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, hi. How you doing? I'm Jesse. I really appreciate that talk because I do believe, like I think a lot of us know that these open source communities are driven, and the lifeblood really is the community, not really necessarily the product. But first of all, I want to get that KubeCon as a Fashion Week T-shirt. That sounds like a good one. Fashion Week for developers, right? But how are you guys measuring engagement right now? I know that you saw some kind of like metrics there. Like what goes behind that?
Okay, so there's this tool, we use DevStats a lot. There's a tool that you can track open source contributions through that. We also are able to have a dashboard of the monthly installs and successful pipeline executions. So those are our major deliverables. And then we also use Paradis for Slack engagement. So we can see how many people join the Slack, how many people stay in Slack, how many people are, messaging throughout there. So those are the main tools of community engagement tracking.
That's cool. I would love to see more of those dashboards.
Yes. I can definitely show you some of those. Anybody else? Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for listening and attending, and I hope to see you at the DocSig tomorrow. I will be taking attendance.